Welcome to the Sharp Mind Show, episode 17. I'm Nate, your host, the FitfutureMD. Make sure you check out InstaSell.com, pick up a cool inspirational t-shirt today, and use code FitfutureMD for 20% off. All right, so yesterday, I guess the Senate was doing an interview of Kash Patel. And Kash Patel says there is no evidence that Epstein trafficked to other individuals. You get this right. Kash Patel says there's no evidence that Epstein trafficked to other individuals. Then why is Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in prison, right? Like, what are you talking about? Why did he get arrested in the first place? What was he charged with? What was the evidence? Right? So this is kind of crazy to me. Like, I saw this, I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? Like, but basically, it's like, who are they protecting, right? With this type of stuff, right? And how is this lady still sitting in prison and she hadn't done like a tell-all book or some kind of something that would shed light on some of this stuff, or are they just not willing to make her a deal to get the evidence that they need, or did they already? And then there was no coverage on the Maxwell trial either, right? So that's kind of weird. But they said there's no evidence that he trafficked anybody, right? So there's at least three places, if you follow the case, there's at least three places that he owned in the U.S. where these girls went to. Plus, he had an island, right? Everybody talks about the island, who was on the island, that type thing. They say we know that, Clinton went to the island, right? Which is really, I don't think, any surprise to anybody. But so there has to be something out there. There's, they say I reported to you, I don't remember what episode it was, but basically that the victims were going to come out with their own list of who was there, right? So they would have, be able to, so all they would have to do is go talk to the victims and see, who was there. They're saying it's already in court documents from the Maxwell case, right? So anyway, I just thought this was kind of ridiculous that he would say there's no evidence that Epstein trafficked anybody. Obviously, that's a complete falsity. So just thought that was kind of crazy, right? So on to life coaching. I'm Nate. I'm a life coach. If you didn't know I was a life coach, that's what I do. If you're interested in life coaching, make sure you click the link down below in the description and sign up for life coaching. All right, so we got Susan today. Susan's a 40-year-old, and she's still paying off $90,000 in student loan from a degree she doesn't use anymore, right? She says she feels trapped and wonders if she made the biggest mistake of her life by going to college, right? So there's a lot of people out there in this situation. I'm definitely one of them, right? I have over $300,000 in student loans because I was trying to go become a doctor, right? And that's only halfway through, by the way. So before I decided, okay, this is not for me. But so $300,000 for a degree we don't use, right? And so this is what I decided to do, right, about the situation. They have a program where your federal student loans, or any loan that you can consolidate under that federal student loan program, could be forgiven if you work for a municipality or you work in service of the government or civic service for 10 years while paying your payment. So that's what I decided to do, right? I said, okay, well, obviously, you know, I'm looking at the jobs in the area that I want to live in, right? Because I want to live at the beach. And I say, well, you know, these are going to be the highest paying jobs in this area, right? Well, first you're just trying to survive, but then after you survive, you're like, okay, then you're trying to decide where you're, you know, going to work. But so that's what I did. I went and I'm working for a municipality, right? And so most of my student loans will be forgiven at the 10-year mark, right? And either way, it was going to be the most money I can make with the current skills that I have in the area I was going to live in, right? Because, you know, everybody's moving to Raleigh, North Carolina, right? Everybody's moving to the Research Triangle Park, but it is a nightmare up there, in my opinion, right? I don't want to be sitting in traffic for hours a day. I don't want to be, you know, I literally live, you know, 3 minutes from my job. I might see a school bus every once in a while and a couple cars on the way to my job every once in a while. But if you were living in Raleigh, you're, you know, where I would live, you know, I would live in like the country part of Johnson County that's still left, right? It wouldn't be in the Clayton, Cleveland area either. You know, it would be, you know, North Johnston area. You're talking about a 45-minute drive, you know, to work every day. And, you know, that's just not for me, right? So, and now, you know, the difference in money up there is not very high compared to the cost of living, right? So, but besides all that, so that's what I decided to do. I decided to find a program that would pay off my student loans if I, you know, worked for them, because I was going to work anyway, you know, and so that's what I did, right? Now, there are companies that offer student loan payments and stuff like that. As I know, Ally Bank is one of them. But there are companies out there that you can negotiate, like, hey, you know, pay my student loan for me, that type of deal. I haven't found that in my area, but it doesn't mean it's not out there, right? But the biggest thing you have to realize is that, you know, and I'll definitely give this as a warning to everybody: don't ever take out student loans, right? Just don't do it, right? You'd rather go into like a service-based business, borrow out business money, pay yourself with the business money, and then go to school with that, because at least you can go bankrupt on that, right? And it was like your business was paying you to get bigger skills, right? To me, that's the best way to do it legally. And, you know, if I had to go back and do it again, that's probably exactly the way we would do it, right? But that's what I tell Susan. It's just, you know, you got $90K left, right? You know, inflation's kicking our butt. You know, if you can get these student loans under that program and get a job in that program, great. If you can't, you got to make a plan to get rid of these student loans, right? Now, student loans, you can't go bankrupt on student loans. So, you know, you basically have to pay them off, right? And so there's two things you could do. You can extend it out for as long as possible, or you can pay it off as fast as possible, right? So for my private student loans, what I've chosen to do is I chose to extend it out as long as possible, right? Now, what does that mean? That means you pay more money over time, right? But what people don't tell you about that is that when you're in this high inflation period, right? We're in this huge high inflation period in time. You know, I refinanced these private student loans from a 9% interest rate down to a 4% interest rate, right? And so as long as inflation's still running hot, the future dollars are going to be smaller and smaller and smaller than I'm actually paying, right? Same thing with like a 30-year mortgage, right? The reason you do a 30-year mortgage is because, you know, that $1,000 mortgage payment is going to look really small in 30 years when, you know, in 20 years or whatever, when, you know, inflation has basically made it where, you know, a dollar is the $100 bill, right? So keep that in mind. Basically, the taxes and insurance are going to be more than your mortgage payment by the end, right? It's talking about, that's real estate. But that's the idea, right? Is that, over time, so you're 40 right now. If you didn't pay these things off till you were 60, that would not be that big of a deal, right? Because by the time you're 60, that 90K is, probably going to be let's say the average salary right now is like, what, 70,000? So it's just going to be a 1 year salary, even in a couple of years, probably from now, probably by 2030, 90K is going to be a year's salary. So keep that in mind, right? Say, I would extend it out as far as possible, make the payment as small as possible, and just set it and forget it, right? Like, but you can also, go smallest to largest and use the debt snowball and pay it off if you really are really worried about it, right? But, you call because money's tight, right? Like, that's the whole reason people call. And, so just keep that in mind. Don't worry about the degree you're not going to use. Like I say, you took the money, you got to pay it back somehow, or you got to give it back in service. So I chose to give it back in service, and the private student loans, extend them out as far as possible to make the payment, basically irrelevant by the time it actually gets paid, right? So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, how would you deal with your student loans? You had, 90K in student loans and you weren't using it anymore. What would you do? Let me know in the comments below. All right, so this episode is brought to you by London and the Glucagon, which is my wife's book. If you have nieces, nephews, or children of your own that love children's books, be sure to check out London and the Glucagon by my wife, Meredith Dillon. And, it's got a great moral. So hopefully, that'll help your kids out too, right? So hours of enjoyment and, great moral, great photos, rhyme, rhythm. That's what London and the Glucagon is about. So check that out if you're interested, right? All right. So we're going to move on to the quote of the day, and it's fear fuels excuses, courage fuels results, right? So what does this quote basically mean? This quote is basically talking about how, most people have this big, huge fear of what they really want, like, or what it takes to get to what they really want. What they really don't know is that, it looks like it's this big ocean, but it's really just a puddle that you're that you're going through, right? And you get that courage to go through that puddle, then all of a sudden, you have the results. Now, this is more based on like starting a business or starting your own thing, like, or jump into a new career or something like that. But, the truth is that, if you're afraid, you're going to make excuses about stuff, right? Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I got no money, blah, 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 no one's going to buy from me, whatever your excuse is, right? And so you have to have courage to overcome that fear, right? And that's what courage is overcoming fear, right? And so that's when you end up with results, good results. So, for me with Intercell, right, I'm coming out like I'm going to stop medical school and I want to open up a t-shirt company, right? Like, basically what I want to do is I want to work out. I want to have a t-shirt company, and I want to live at the beach. So, got the t-shirt company, I work out every day, and I live at the beach. All three accomplished, right? So, but it's like, what would people say? Like, oh, you were supposed to be a doctor, right? Like, why are you opening the t-shirt company, right? Why are you trying to inspire people? Like, that type of thing. So that's why I opened Intercell.com, or one of the ways, I had to overcome this fear to open Intercell.com, right? So and you know, we got the results we wanted, right? We got the life we want, right? So keep that in mind. And I will be on to the last topic of the day of the episode, and it's a big one, right? So we're going to talk about GLP-1s, right? So we got the biggest craze ever in the history of man for weight loss, right? You know, you thought that, you know, all this, you know, methamphetamines or amphetamines, not methamphetamines, the amphetamines, the, you know, epinephrine and not epinephrine. No, not epinephrine. What's that stuff called? Anyway, you thought that all this like weight loss mania, you know, was going on before this, but GLP-1s have just gone like nuts, right, as far as weight loss, right? But they were originally developed for type 2 diabetes, right? So what is GLP-1? GLP-1 is a natural hormone that your gut releases after you eat, right? So the idea is that, you know, basically the companies have put something in your food that block GLP-1 from being released, or the GLP-1 receptors from being, you know, induced, so that you continue to eat their product and over-engorge on their product so that they make more money, right? But basically, GLP-1 is basically to make it seem like you're full, right? So it stimulates insulin release and suppresses glucagon, right? And then that causes your stomach to slow emptying, right? Helping food stay in your stomach longer, which makes you feel full longer, right? So, now, the side effects of that, you're going to be nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. Obviously, all those side effects are supposedly improve over time, right? But the serious risks of this medication, this is what everybody, you know, needs to know, right, is pancreatitis, gallbladder issues, you got thyroid tumors, and it's not listed here, but I've seen where you have literally necrotizing gastritis, right, where literally you have an overgrowth of bacteria in your, you know, that's probably because somebody took too much, right, of the GLP-1 or something, but the bottom line is that GLP-1s mimic your natural level of feeling full, right? That's kind of what they do. Now, what's the issue behind this, right? Is that, you know, so this makes it where for some reason your body is calling for more nutrition, right? Whether it be because of your food or because you actually need more nutrition. So, you know, I see people that are on GLP-1s that would, you know, basically, you know, have some sort of, you know, vitamin deficiency, have some sort of, you know, basically you see their face shrunken in, you see their hair getting thin, like that type of thing, right? It's, but they've lost a lot of weight. So they, you know, obviously by doing that, they've gotten rid of a lot of the problems. But people that aren't necessarily heavy are starting to use this kind of medication, right? It's not like, it's really, you know, for people that have diabetes. It's not really for people, you know, just to lose weight, right? So the biggest thing for me is that to use caution on these medications, right? Like, do everything in your power to lose the weight without having to do that. Now, so the easiest way for most people to lose weight is to fast, right? You don't eat lunch, you don't eat breakfast, you eat from 4 to 7 o'clock at night, and so you might eat, you know, once at 4, once at 6:30, you know, so, and you try to keep it under between 1,200 and 1,800 calories, you know, in that amount of time. And most of the time, that's going to take care of everything that somebody would have a problem with, right? And then, just having the discipline to do that. But most of the time, fasting will take care of all that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's people with great discipline that can eat 6 meals a day, 6 small meals a day, and be fine. But most people don't have that discipline, right? So keep that in mind. I would do a lot of stuff before even trying something like this because, like you said, the side effect of fasting, is losing the weight and basically having, limited to no side effects from fasting, right? Whereas the side effects of stuff sitting in your stomach longer, it could be all the way to death, right? So, if you're going to take something that's a GLP-1 that could cause you to die, you figure you would try everything else first before you try it, right? Because it's like, so you're basically taking it like, either way, I'm going to die, right? So if I don't take this, I'm going to be this huge person that has all these chronic issues and dies a slow, painful death, or I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to take this GLP-1 and could die as well, right? So keep that in mind. GLP-1s have definitely become the fad because they do work at making you lose weight, right? So, all right, so that's episode 17. I'm Nate. I'm a life coach. If you're interested in life coaching, make sure you sign up in the description below. Hit me up in the DM if you have any questions. I charge $2,000 for the year, whereas most life coaches charge you $150 an hour, minimum 2 hours, and then you probably never see them again. So they come in, take you $300, don't help you at all, and roll out. Or they help you a little bit and extend you along all year till you're paying well over $2,000 for their services, right? So $2,000, you're going to get me every week. I'm going to get you straightened out. And if I don't straighten your life out, if I don't make you successful, then you get your $2,000 back, right? Make sure you shop at InstaSell.com, pick you up a cool inspirational t-shirt, check out my wife's book, Money in the Goo Goo Goo, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.